My friends, life does not demand perfection from us, but it certainly demands effort. Nobody ever succeeded by sitting on a couch, blaming the weather, the economy, or their neighbor's dog for their failures. Every great story you've heard, every success you've admired, has one thing in common: someone tried. Trying is not about winning every time, and God. It's about taking the first step when you don't know if there's a road ahead. It's about showing up when it's easier to stay home. It's about giving your 100% when no one is clapping for you. I have met people who say, "And God, I will start when the conditions are perfect." Let me tell you a secret. Conditions are never perfect. If you wait for the rain to stop, you might miss the rainbow. The perfect moment is not found, it is created. We have excuses ready for everything. I don't have the skills. Learn them. I don't have the money. Start small. I don't have the time. Make it. Excuses are free, but they cost you your dreams. Effort, on the other hand, may be expensive in terms of sweat and energy, but it buys you experience, growth, and sometimes even miracles. Imagine a farmer who says, "Ours and God. I will plant the seeds when I'm sure the harvest will be perfect." That day will never come, but the one who sows, waters, and cares for the plants, despite uncertainty, is the one who tastes the fruits. God. Life will not give you results because you wished for them. It will give you results because you worked for them. Even if you fail, you'll have the satisfaction of knowing you tried, and that's worth more than regret of never attempting. So stop waiting, stop doubting, start trying. Your future self will thank you. Remember, there is no shame in falling, but there is shame in not standing up to try again. There is no excuse for not trying. There is a strange pattern I have noticed in people's lives. They keep waiting for the perfect moment to start. The perfect job offer, the perfect financial stability, the perfect mood, the perfect weather. It's as if they are expecting life to roll out a red carpet, hand them a bouquet of roses, and say, "Here, now is the time." But my dear friends, for 16 hours in God, perfection is not an arrival gate you find on the map. It's a mirage you keep chasing and never quite reach. And God. I once met a young man who had been dreaming of starting a small business for years. He had the idea, the passion, and the vision. But every time I asked him why he hadn't started yet, his answer was the same. "Not now. For 16 hours and God, I am waiting for things to be right." He was waiting for the economy to improve, for his savings to grow, for a partner to join in, for his workload to lighten, for the stars to align, basically for life itself to give him a handwritten invitation. 10 years later, he was still waiting, and do you know what had changed? Nothing except that his dream had faded a little more each year. That's the danger of chasing perfection. You lose time. And time, unlike money, never comes back. God. People often confuse preparation with perfection. Preparation is good. You plan, you learn, you equip yourself. But perfection, that's a trap. Because no matter how much you prepare, life will still throw surprises at you. The day you begin, there will still be uncertainties. There will still be risks. There will still be 100 reasons to hesitate. If you ask a farmer, when is the perfect time to plant? He won't say, when I'm absolutely sure it won't rain too much or too little, when I have the perfect fertilizer, and when the weather forecast predicts exactly 21070C every day for the next 3 months. No. He plants when the season calls for it. He knows there will be unexpected storms, maybe pests, God, maybe droughts. But he also knows that if he doesn't plant, nothing will grow at all. Life works the same way. The perfect moment is the one when you decide to start. That's it. That's the how is the whole secret. The moment you take action, imperfectly, awkwardly, maybe even clumsily, you break the cycle of hesitation. You set something in motion. And momentum is far more valuable than perfection. Hours in God, I have also seen people who start without having it all figured out, and their journey shapes them along the way. They learn skills on the go. They adapt to challenges. God, they build confidence because they're in the arena, not in the waiting room. 16 hours and God. And that's the irony. The ones who begin without perfection often end up achieving more than those who waited for perfection to arrive. Think of all the great inventions, businesses, and art we admire. None of them started perfectly polished. They began as rough drafts, messy experiments, and trial and error adventures. Perfection was the result of trying, not the requirement to begin. So if you're standing on the edge of your dream, waiting for the perfect time, let me tell you, you'll wait forever. Step forward now. Your first attempt may not be perfect, but it will be progress. And progress, my friend, is far more beautiful than perfection. Perfection is an illusion. And one of its cousins is the idea of ideal conditions. We love telling ourselves, God, I'll start when the timing is right. But the truth is, there is no universal clock that will strike and announce, now is the perfect moment to begin. Life is full of moving parts. Weather changes, the economy shifts, people's moods fluctuate, your own energy rises and falls. 16 hours and God. If you wait for all these factors to align perfectly, you will end up doing something tragic, nothing at all. I remember hearing about a man who wanted to climb a mountain. He had dreamed of it since childhood, but he kept saying, not this year, next year will be better. Why? Because each year, he found a reason the conditions weren't good enough. One year it was too rainy. Another year his job was too demanding. Another year he didn't feel physically prepared enough. And God, finally, decades later, he was older, weaker, and the mountain was no longer an option for him. The saddest part, the mountain never moved, but his window of opportunity did. And it closed. That's how life works. Opportunities rarely present themselves in neat, shiny packages. They arrive wrapped in uncertainty, risk, and even discomfort. You might have to start when you feel nervous, when your resources are not complete, when your confidence is still shaky, and that's okay. Look at nature. If a seed waited for the perfect weather to sprout, it would remain underground forever. Seeds grow because they take chances. And God, sometimes the rain comes late, sometimes the wind is harsh, but they push through anyway. If they can do that without a mind to strategize, what's stopping us with all our wisdom, creativity, and ability to adapt? For 16 hours in God, the problem with waiting for perfect conditions is that the longer you wait, the more comfortable you get in not trying. Comfort becomes a soft prison. It feels safe, but it traps you. Before you know it, your "I'll start when" turns into "I wish I had started back then." And regret, my friend, is far heavier than failure. People who succeed are not the ones who had ideal starting points. They are the ones who started anyway. Think for 16 hours in God. Think of entrepreneurs who launched their businesses during recessions. Artists who painted while living in small rented rooms. Athletes ours who trained without professional facilities. God, they didn't have the perfect environment. They created progress out of imperfection. And here's the twist, even if you start in less than perfect conditions, your effort can turn them into good conditions. Momentum changes circumstances. A person who begins with little can grow into someone who has more than enough. 16 hours in God. But that transformation is only possible if they take the first step now, not later. So, the truth is simply, there is no perfect time, only the time you decide to make perfect through action. Waiting for the stars to align is a poetic way of procrastinating. And God, you have the power to turn an imperfect moment into a turning point in your life. And God, but that will never happen while you're still waiting. Excuses are perhaps the most creative things human beings make. Far more than inventions, art, or poetry. We don't need a degree to create them. We don't need tools. We don't even need time. Excuses come to us naturally, like breathing. The problem is, while they cost us nothing to produce, they cost us everything in life. They quietly drain away our potential, robbing us of the chance to grow, to achieve, and to truly live. I once spoke to a young man who told me he wanted to write a book. He had ideas, stories, and the desire to inspire people. But he also had a long list of excuses. God, I don't have the right laptop, I'm too busy. At work, my room is too noisy. I need more life experience before I can write. Every excuse sounded logical on the surface. But months passed, then years, and his book remained unwritten. Not because he lacked talent, God, but because he kept protecting his inaction with a blanket of excuses. That's what excuses do. They don't always look like lies. They often appear reasonable. They sound like valid reasons. But deep down, we know they are simply permission slips we give ourselves to avoid discomfort, effort, or risk. They give us a false sense of safety while slowly killing our dreams. If you look closely, every successful person you admire had plenty of reasons not to start. They had lack of resources, lack of time, lack of confidence, sometimes even lack of support from the people around them. But they refused to let those reasons become excuses. They acted anyway, and that's why we know their names today. There's a powerful truth here, egg. Your dream will never argue with your excuses, but your future will. 10 years from now, 16 hours and God, you might look back and realize that the reasons you didn't try were just fragile stories you told yourself. And that realization will hurt more than any failure you could have experienced along the way. Think about a river. It doesn't stop flowing because there's a rock in its path. It doesn't say, well, that's it. This rock is too big. I'll just stay here forever. No, it flows around it, over it, or under it. It finds another way forward. We need to treat obstacles in life the same way. Instead of making excuses about why something can't be done, we need to search for how it can be done. Excuses are addictive because they keep us comfortable. They save us from the embarrassment of trying and failing. But they also save us from the pride of trying and succeeding. Every time you give in to an excuse and God, you're reinforcing the habit of not acting. The longer you keep that habit, the harder it becomes to break it. The truth is, there's never going to be a shortage of reasons to delay action. If you want them, you'll always find them. But if you choose effort over excuses, you'll discover something amazing. Your potential is far greater than you ever imagined. And the more you act, the less you'll even feel the need for excuses. The first step is always the hardest. Not because it's physically difficult and God, but because it carries the weight of uncertainty, fear, and self-doubt. We stand at the edge of our goals, looking at the long road ahead, and our minds start whispering 16 hours and God. What if you fail? What if people laugh? What if you're not ready? But here's the truth. Without that first step, the road doesn't even exist. And God, I once met a man who wanted to run a marathon. He wasn't athletic. He didn't have fancy running shoes, and he was already in his 40s. But every time he thought about running 42 kilometers, it felt impossible, so he didn't run at all. Then one day, a friend told him, don't think about 42 kilometers. Just think about the first 200 meters. He took that advice, put on his old sneakers, and jogged to the corner of his street. That was it. His first step. The next day, he went a little farther. Weeks turned into months, and before long, he wasn't just running 200 meters. He was running 10 kilometers. Eventually, he completed a marathon. It all began with that tiny, almost insignificant first step. God. That's the magic of beginning. It breaks the inertia. 16 hours and God. Inertia is the invisible wall that keeps us stuck. The longer we wait, the taller that wall becomes. But the moment we move, even just a little, we create momentum. And momentum is powerful. It pulls us forward even when our motivation wavers. People often say, I'll start when I'm fully ready. But readiness is not a prerequisite for the first step. It is the result of taking it. And God, you don't learn to swim by reading about water. You learn by getting in. You don't become confident by waiting for confidence. You build it by acting while still afraid. Think about a child learning to walk. They don't wait until they understand balance, coordination, and physics. They wobble, they fall, they bump into things, but they keep stepping. Eventually, walking becomes second nature. You were 16 hours. Imagine if a child refused to take a first step until they were certain they'd never fall. None of us would be walking today. The first step also has another hidden power. It changes your identity. The moment you start, you are no longer someone who wants to or plans to. You become someone who does. 16 hours in God. You're no longer a dreamer staring at the horizon. You're a traveler on the journey. That shift is transformative. The beautiful thing is, your first step doesn't have to be big. It can be small, almost laughably small. Write one paragraph of your book. Save your first 100 rupees for your business. Sign up for a single class to learn a skill. And God, the point is not the size of the step. It's the fact that you've moved from thought to action. The path ahead will still be long. You will still have challenges. But you will face them while moving forward, not while standing still. And as you walk, the road will reveal itself. You may not see the destination yet, but with each step, you get closer. God. Growth is never born in the comfort zone. It is forged in the furnace of attempts. In Hours in God, you can read every book on swimming, watch hours of tutorials, and memorize the perfect strokes in your head. But until you get into the water, you will remain the same person you were yesterday. Attempts are the bridge between knowledge and transformation. Without them, dreams remain theories and potential remains unused. I once knew a young woman who wanted to learn public speaking. God. She admired speakers who could stand on a stage and move people with their words. But she was terrified of the spotlight. For months, she told herself she'd practice. When she was ready, one day, a friend convinced her to try just once, even if it was imperfect. She stumbled, her voice shook, and she forgot half of she had planned to say. But something remarkable happened. When she stepped off that stage, she realized the fear had already lessened. She had survived her first attempt, 16 hours in God. By her 10th attempt, she wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. That is the magic of attempts still. And God, every one of them, successful or not, changes you. You may fail, but you fail forward. You collect experience like a traveler collects stamps in a passport. And those experiences slowly shape you into someone stronger, wiser, and more capable than before. It's easy to admire someone's success and think they were born with it. But behind every master is a beginner who made 100 clumsy attempts. The greatest athletes, musicians, entrepreneurs, 16 hours God, and leaders did not arrive polished. They were sculpted by the chisel of repeated effort. Every mistake was a lesson. Every try was a brick in the foundation of their skill. Attempts also teach humility. When you try and fail, you realize you are not invincible. But you also realize you are resilient. God, you stop fearing mistakes because see them as part of the process. The more you try, the less you care about looking foolish, and the more you focus on improving. Think of a sculptor working with a rough block of stone. Each strike of the hammer may not reveal the masterpiece right away, but each strike is necessary. Without those blows, the statue remains trapped inside the stone. In the same way, your potential remains hidden until you make enough attempts to reveal it. The beauty is, attempts don't just grow your skills, they grow you. They build your patience, discipline, and confidence. They show you what you are capable of when you refuse to quit. And sometimes they lead you to unexpected places. You might be 16 hours in God. You might start trying for one goal and discover an entirely new passion along the way. Many people avoid trying because they're afraid of failing, but failure is not the enemy. Inaction is. For 16 hours in God, a fail tempts you forward because it teaches you what doesn't work. Inaction, on the other hand, teaches you nothing. You stay in the same place with the same fears, holding the same unused potential. So, if you want to grow, God, don't wait the perfect plan or the guarantee of success. Take the shot. Make the move. Try, fail, learn, and try again. Every attempt, no matter how small, is a seed planted in the soil of your future. And with enough attempts, that seed will grow into something far greater than you imagined. Persistence is not about doing something once and succeeding. It's about doing it again and again, even when success feels 100 miles away. Ours in God. It's the ability to keep showing up when the excitement fades, when the applause stops, and when the journey becomes heavier than you thought it would be. And the more you persist, the more resilient you become. I once met a man who wanted to learn to play the guitar. At first, he was thrilled. He imagined himself playing effortlessly, impressing friends, maybe even performing on stage. But after a few weeks, his fingers itched, the chords sounded wrong, and progress felt painfully slow. Most people would have quit at that point. But he kept practicing every day. Some days he improved, other days he seemed to get worse. But he kept going. Months later, those same sore fingers played music that moved people to tears. That's what persistence does. It transforms struggle into strength. Each time you push through frustration, you're building more than skill. God, you're building inner toughness. Life will test you with challenges that try to wear you down. Persistence is the armor that protects you. It's what turns, I can't do this, into, I've come this far, 16 hours in God. I'm not stopping now. Resilience doesn't happen overnight. 16 hours, God. It's like a muscle. It grows only when it's pushed against resistance. If you lift a weight once, you don't get stronger. But lift it repeatedly, God. Even when your arms are tired, and over time, you become unshakable. The same principle applies to your dreams. God. The days when you feel like quitting are the days when persistence builds the most strength inside you. 16 hours in God, history is full of people who succeeded because they refused to stop trying. And God, inventors who fail hundreds of times before finding the solution. Writers whose books were rejected dozens of times before becoming bestsellers. Hours in God. Athletes who lost more games than they won before becoming champions. We admire their success and God, but their real achievement was their ability to persist in the face of setbacks. And God. And here's something most people overlook. Persistence changes your relationship with failure. When you keep going despite failing, failure loses its power over you. It stops being a signal to quit and starts being a teacher, God. You begin to see it as part of the journey rather than the end of it. I remember a story of a farmer whose land was hit by floods year after year. Many around him gave up, sold their land, and moved away. But he stayed. He replanted every season, even when the losses hurt. Over the years, his soil became richer from the silt the left behind, and eventually, his farm produced more than any in the region. And God, that reward wasn't luck. It was persistence turning hardship into opportunity. The truth is, most people give up too early. They stop right before the breakthrough, not realizing that persistence is often the final push that turns effort into victory. Resilience is not built by easy days. It's built by the days that make you want to quit, but you choose to keep going. Every skill can be learned. That's not just an optimistic statement. It's a truth proven by history, science, and human experience. The problem is, we often label ourselves too quickly. I'm just not good at this. Or, I could never do that. What we really mean is, I haven't learned it yet. But there's a world of difference between can't and haven't yet. I once met a man who was terrified of technology. He couldn't even send an email without feeling nervous. He would often say, I'm too old for this stuff. But then his business started struggling because the world was moving online. Faced and got with either closing down or adapting, he chose to learn. It was uncomfortable, frustrating, and slow at first. He would forget steps, press the wrong buttons, and sometimes lose his work entirely. But he didn't stop. In a year's time, the man the US 16 hours and God, the man who once feared computers was running his business entirely online and even teaching others how to do it. That's the beauty of human potential. We are built to adapt. The brain has an incredible ability to grow and rewire itself through learning. Every skill, from playing a musical instrument to coding software, from cooking gourmet meals to mastering a new language, is learnable if you're willing to put in the time and effort. The reason so many people never develop a new skill is not because they're incapable. It's because they convince themselves it's impossible before even trying. They compare themselves to experts and forget that every expert was once a beginner fumbling through the basics. The violinist whose music now fills grand concert halls once played squeaky, uneven notes. The chef whose dishes you admire once burned toast. To ours and God. The public speaker who inspires thousands once forgot their lines in front of 10 people. Learning any skill follows the same cycle: awkward beginnings, gradual improvement, moments of frustration, and eventually mastery. 16. God. The early stages are often the most discouraging because progress feels invisible. But with consistency, that invisible growth becomes undeniable. Skills also have a way of connecting to each other. Learning one thing often makes it easier to learn something else. A person who learns painting develops patience and observation, 16 hours and God, which might help them in photography. Someone who learns sports develops discipline and teamwork, which can translate to leadership in business. Every skill you learn becomes part of your personal toolbox, ready to be applied in ways you may not even anticipate. It's also God. It's so worth remembering that resources to learn have never been more abundant. Books and God, online courses, tutorials, mentors, all are within reach for most people today. 16 hours and God. The only real question is whether you're willing to use them. So when you find yourself saying, I could never do that, pause and reframe it as, I could learn to do that. That small shift in mindset changes everything. It opens the door to possibility instead of slamming it shut. And as you acquire new skills, your confidence grows. Not just in that specific ability, but in your capacity to take on anything new. Your life is shaped by the skills you decide to learn. Hours in God, the more you learn, the more options you have. The more options you have, the more control you have over your future and God. And it all begins with the belief that every skill is within your reach if you're willing to learn it. 16 hours and God. Small beginnings are often underestimated because they don't look impressive at first glance. We live in a world that celebrates big wins, grand launches, and overnight success stories, God, but we rarely see the tiny, humble starting points behind them. Yet, almost every great achievement in history started small. So small that it could have been dismissed as insignificant. God, I once heard about a man who wanted to start a bakery. He didn't have the capital for a shop, expensive ovens, or a marketing campaign. All he had was a home kitchen, a second-hand mixer, and a few handwritten recipes from his grandmother. So, he began by baking bread for a few neighbors. The orders were tiny at first. 2 lives here, 16 and God, a cake there. But he treated each one as if it were the most important order of his life. God. Over time, word spread, orders grew, and eventually, his small kitchen became the starting seed for a thriving bakery. That's the quiet power of small beginnings. They grow. A small step, repeated consistently, can build a momentum that turns into something unstoppable. It's like planting a seed. At first, it's just a small, fragile thing buried in the soil. But with care and persistence, it can grow into a tree that provides shade for generations. The challenge is that small beginnings don't feel rewarding in the moment. You might write your first blog post and only get 5 readers. You might make your first sale and earn just enough to buy a cup of tea. US 16s and God, you might go to the gym for a week and see no visible change in the mirror. It's easy to think, this isn't working, and quit. But the truth is, small beginnings are building something invisible at first. Habits, discipline, and experience. Those invisible foundations are what make long-term success possible. Look at nature. The mighty bamboo plant spends years growing its roots underground before it even peaks above the soil. During that time, it looks like nothing is happening. But once it starts to grow, it can shoot up several feet in just weeks. Without those hidden years of preparation, that rapid growth would never be possible. Small beginnings also make things less intimidating. If you aim to climb a mountain, you don't leap to the summit. You take one step. If you want to write a book, you don't write all 300 pages in a day. You start with a single sentence, breaking big goals into small, manageable beginnings removes fear and gives you the courage to start. The beauty of starting small is that you can adjust and learn without massive risk. Mistakes made early are easier to fix. 16 hours and God, lessons learned in the small stages prepare you for the bigger opportunities ahead. In many ways, starting small is not a limitation. It's an advantage. So don't dismiss the small start. That tiny effort you pin today might look insignificant, but in time and God, it can grow into something far greater than you imagined. Every giant tree was once a seed. Every empire was once a single idea. Every success story you admire began with a small, humble beginning. And yours can too. And God. Uncertainty is not just a part of life. It is the very environment in which life unfolds. We often treat it like an unwelcome guest. 16 hours, something to be avoided or eliminated before we take action. But the truth is, 16 hours in God. If you wait for all uncertainty to disappear, you'll spend your whole life waiting. The sooner you accept that uncertainty is permanent and God, the sooner you can start moving forward despite it. And God, I remember meeting a young woman who dreamed of starting her own clothing brand. She had sketches, designs, and a clear vision of what she wanted to create. But she kept delaying because she wanted more certainty before investing time and money. She wanted to be sure customers would buy, that the market would stay stable, and that her designs would be loved. But life offers no such guarantees. Years later, she admitted that while she waited for certainty, others had stepped forward, taken the risk, God and built the brands she had once envisioned. That's the harsh truth. Uncertainty is unavoidable. The job you think is secure might vanish tomorrow. The investment you believe is safe might drop in value. The plan you mapped out perfectly might face unexpected twists. This is not a reason to be discouraged. It's a reason to act now. If uncertainty is always present, then today is as good a day as any to start. And God, the irony is that uncertainty is also where possibilities live. Think about it. If everything in life was certain, there would be no adventure, no surprise, no discovery. A farmer planting seeds doesn't know exactly how the season will unfold. Too much rain, too little rain, unexpected pests. But they plant anyway because the possibility of harvest is worth the risk of uncertainty. In fact, 16 hours in God, uncertainty is the birthplace of creativity and innovation. When the outcome isn't guaranteed, you're forced to think differently, to adapt, and to explore new approaches. God. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in history came from people stepping into the unknown without a clear map. Scientists, 16 hours in God. Explorers, entrepreneurs, and artists who had no certainty of success but moved forward anyway. The real danger is not uncertainty. It's letting the fear of it paralyze you. Fear whispers, what if it doesn't work? But what if it does? 16 hours in God. What if the opportunity you're afraid of missing out on is waiting on the other side of action? The only way to find out is to try. And here's something I've learned. Certainty is often built after you start, not before. The first steps may be shaky, filled with questions and doubts. But as you keep moving, you gain experience, clarity, and direction. Slowly, the unknown becomes familiar. 16 hours in God, and what once felt risky begins to feel natural. Think of a sailor heading into the open sea. The horizon looks endless and uncertain. They cannot see the destination from the shore. But with 16 hours and God mile, new landmarks appear and the path becomes clearer. Without leaving the shore, they would never have known the way. So, instead of waiting for certainty, in hours in God, you embrace uncertainty as a sign that you're on the edge of growth. Every dream worth pursuing will have risk attached to it. That's not a warning. It's an invitation to step forward anyway. Fulfillment does not come only from winning. It comes from knowing you gave your best. God, from the satisfaction of trying when it would have been easier to walk away. The joy of life is not found solely in the trophies and titles, but in the quiet pride you feel when you look back and say, I showed up, I tried. I once met a retired athlete who never made it to the Olympics and never broke a world record and never became famous. Yet, when he spoke about his career, there was no bitterness, only joy. He said, may not have been the fastest, God, but I know I left everything I had on the track. I trained, I competed, I gave my all. 16 hours in God. That's why I sleep peacefully at night. His fulfillment didn't come from the medals. He didn't win 16 hours in God, but from the effort he did give. That's the beauty of trying You cannot control the outcome, but you can control the effort. And when you put your heart into something, if that effort leaves a mark on you, even if the world doesn't applaud, you walk away with strength, wisdom, and experiences that can never be taken away. Too many people live with the H of, what if? What if I had applied for that job? God, what if I had started that business? What if I had told that person how I felt? Those questions haunt far more than the sting of failure ever could. Failure fades with time. Regret lingers. The only way to silence what if is to try. Trying also has a way of expanding your life in unexpected directions. Listen, God, you might set out to achieve one goal and end up discovering something entirely different that brings you joy. God, maybe you try painting and realize you love teaching others. Maybe you start a small side project and it leads you to a new career. And God, none of that happens without the first attempt. And here's another truth. Trying inspires others. And God, when people see you putting yourself out there, even in uncertainty, even without guarantees, they see courage. God, your willingness to try becomes a spark for someone else to step forward in their own life. God, in this way, your effort has a ripple effect far beyond what you might imagine. And God, fulfillment also comes from the lessons you gain along the way. Every attempt teaches you something about your limits. And more importantly, about how far beyond those limits you can actually go. You realize you are stronger, more capable, and more adaptable than you thought. That self-discovery is one of life's greatest rewards. For 16 hours, and God, there's a story I love about an early man who decided to run his first marathon at the age of 70. People told him it was pointless, that he was too old, and that he would never finish. He trained anyway. On race day, he didn't come first or even in the top half. But when he crossed that finish line, tears streamed down his face. He said, I didn't do this to prove I could win. I did it to prove I would try. That's fulfillment. Not measured in position, but in personal truth. So yes, winning is sweet. Achieving a dream is amazing. But the real treasure lies in the act of trying itself. And God, because even if you don't get the outcome you hoped for, you will have lived fully without holding yourself back. And that is a victory all on its own.